Hello. This is a quick customer demo, and it was a special request from Manish, and Manish lives all the way in Singapore. So I wanted to give him this short video so that he could understand how to use the Teams action called post a choice of options as the Flowbot to a user. Okay, so his case scenario is that he's storing cases, and that could be in Dynamics, that could be in Azure DevOps, that could be in Zendesk, or that could be in ServiceNow. So wherever you keep cases. Now, because I don't have accounts in many of those things, I created a cases list right here in my SharePoint list. But it does not matter where your cases are. And what we're going to do is we're going to be able to have our support team work on these cases. And then as soon as they are finished working on the case, they're going to come here to SharePoint. They're going to click on the case that they're finished working on. And then they're going to ask for some validation from the customer. All right. And so let's build this flow together. In this case, the assumption is that the customer is using Microsoft Teams because we are going to post to them via Teams. Okay, so that would be a dependency with this action. Now, of course, you can use the approval action if it's, you just want it to be broad. And so you could create an approval with custom responses, and then you can post that to Teams, and also it will show up in the approval centers in both their mobile and their desktop. So that would expand it even further beyond Teams. Okay, so that's something to think about. All right, so I have started a flow here with the action inside, post a choice of options as the flow bot to the user. And basically, the choices that we're going to put here are, yes, you may close the case, or we're going to put here, need more validation time, okay, or time to validate changes. Or the last thing we can put is no, this did not resolve my issue. Please keep investigating. Okay, that's what we're doing here. And it's okay for these to be long. You want your options to be such that the user doesn't have a question on what it means, right? You could most definitely change this to yes, close the case. You could say need more time without the to validate changes. You could say no, please keep investigating. So you can keep it short. I'm making it very crystal clear right now, just for the sake of understanding this use case. Now, the headline is what's going to show above these options. And so I'm going to basically give them instructions here. Could you please confirm that our changes worked? Okay, I'm just going to call this, you know what, because we have a message below. So in the headline, I'm going to put service validation request, right? Because I'm just letting them know what this is. This is like a title, right? And then down here, I can put, please confirm that the changes we made have worked and that we may close this case. All right, now there are a few advanced options here. There's a message summary, in this case not really needed. The alert, yes or no, is basically whether or not they're going to get a notification in Teams where it'll light up a little notification at the bottom right of their screen, in addition to posting it in their direct user feed. So if it's really important, sometimes it's a good idea to add the yes. Okay. Now, the one thing I want to do here, though, is add some details so that they don't have to go far away. So I can say case title and case description, just so that they remember what this is about, right? And then we need to use some dynamic tokens here. So let's go get the information about our case. So let's just do case validation, and then we'll save this. I like to save when I've gotten some level of work done. And I'm going to change this. I didn't put a 2. So that entire message there, guys, whenever you get an error message, here's the key. Read it, even though it may sound like Greek to you, but look for words like missing or value, so kind of scan it for what seems familiar. And if you notice, this last sentence here is really clear. It's missing a required property. What's the required property? Well, it's the recipient. You can see it at the end here. So I love when I get errors on videos because it kind of helps me to explain to you, how do you work through errors? In this case, the message is pretty clear. I forgot to put a recipient, all right? And of course, we can't send a message to a person unless we have a recipient, right? Okay, so we'll put me in there as the recipient. Okay, now when we save, we won't get that error message anymore. All right, so I love the way Flow does check your syntax and kind of look for any missing values, and it will let you know. But even if the messages seem a little bit intimidating, just read through them, and I bet you if you scan it, you'll see what's wrong. All right, I'm going to actually replace this trigger with the trigger on SharePoint. So I'm going to look for SharePoint triggers. And again, this could be any data source that you want. And I'm going to use for selected item. And this will enable the person on SharePoint to kind of pick an item and then run this flow. Okay, as soon as they finish the ticket, they'll pick the item and they'll run the flow. The list name is cases, and that's the site. Now, there's only reason I would do an advanced options, and this is this particular point applies mostly to SharePoint. If you had a really wide list, or your data source for cases is a lot of columns, especially a lot of lookup columns, then create a view from your cases and pick that view here. All right. In this case, my SharePoint list has very few columns. It has under 10 columns. So there's no reason for me to do that. And there's 0 lookups in that list. So I have no concerns. But just so that you know, it is a great idea to assign this to a list view if your list is very wide, or if you have a lot of lookups that would slow down, how it works. Okay. So now, basically that's it. So now I want to get the details of this selected item so I can use it in this dynamic content, because I believe we don't get the metadata from the trigger. So what I'm going to do is add another SharePoint action that will get the details of that item that triggered it. So again, I'm going to type SharePoint, which will filter my connections. Then I click on that, and now I'm going to pick get item. There should be a single get item, and I can search up here, get item, and just make sure you pick the single, because this is just one item. There's absolutely no reason to do get items. You just want that item. So just choose get item. And then after you have that get item on there, then you redirect it again to the same site and the same list. And this is very important. In order for this to work, these two things need to be pointing at the same site and the same list. When I click inside ID, it will give me the ID from the trigger, and that's what I'll use here. So now I have everything I need to have the dynamic content for title. And I'll just scroll down to show you that now if you look under the get item action that we just added here, it returns all the columns and their values. And if you chose a particular view, then you would only get the columns in that particular view. All right, so I'm going to choose title. These should be alphabetized, but it can depend on the data source. And then description. In this case, the list says details. So I can change this to details instead of description. But it can be whatever, whatever you think is good to say. It doesn't necessarily have to match the header that's at your data source, whatever you think they'll understand. And then here below, I might actually say thank you. And we're done, okay? So let's run this. So we're just gonna save it. And then once it's saved, we wait for the word saved. Sorry, I'm gonna click got it here. We wait for after we click save, wait for seeing the word saved over here on the right. And then you can browse away, even though this message will warn you, okay? And now we're gonna go back to SharePoint and try it out. So I'm gonna use, there's actually there's a duplicate here, so let me get rid of that. All right, so let's use this last one here, correction of garage door lock. So I'm gonna pretend to be the technical support engineer, and I'm finished working on this. So now I'm gonna actually go and post on Teams that case validation. Now notice it popped up on my ribbon, which is great. What it says to me though is that my name isn't very clear, right? So that was a very geeky name. I'm going to name it send validation. Okay, I'm sorry. Request validation from customer on Teams. All right, so that I know it's longer and you can think these out any way you want, but again, just remember my rule is keep it simple. Keep it so simple. Simple doesn't always mean short, but keep it simple so that they understand it, right? And so I'm just going to give this time to, yep, it just edited, took a minute to refresh. And now you see I have the actual trigger here, request validation from customer on Teams. So now it's clear. You're going to request validation from who you're going to request it and where it's going to go. Because this is not an approval, so it will not show up anywhere except in the user's Teams feed. Okay, so now I'm going to click that and run the flow. And the people who run this flow just have to have access to adding details to this. They have to have access to this list. Okay, and then run flow. And then now we're going to go back to the flow and look at the run. Let's look at the run first. It is running. Let's see. We're going to watch this a little bit. For selected item did trigger. The item did get the details, and you can see the details here. But it's waiting. This is orange because it's waiting. All right, it's waiting for me to do something. So now I'm going to go back to Teams. So we can do that here in the browser. And we're going to look at my activity feed. So my chat. And notice there's a new chat right here. And this new chat, and those are the notifications you saw. And here's my service request. Okay, so my service request, we'll just close the chat. My service request here is saying, please confirm that the changes we made have worked and that we may close this case. And then it gives you the title, correction of the garage door lock case, the door lock, and then case details, garage door lock was broken during the install. So here's one thing we don't like about this is it didn't put any return, even though we put a return in the flow. And this is something that we're going to go fix, okay? No worries. And then underneath here, look, here's the options that we gave. So I'm going to click on one just to show you how the run will stop. So the run is waiting for me to click on one, okay? So I'm going to click on need more time to validate changes, and I'm going to say our team is out on an offsite. Okay, so they need more time. I'm going to press submit. This will close this so that the responses are no longer visible. We don't want somebody else to try. We don't want that person to forget that they've responded, and it will remind them what they responded. Okay, so let's make the couple of fixes we're going to make here. So we're going to edit this. And first we're going to get these returns in. Now notice I have returns in here. They are there. But here's the thing that I've noticed. If you return twice where you would normally return once, then these returns will show up as you expect. And it's just the way Teams formats their data. It's not HTML format. It's its own type of markup. And so I noticed that if I double enter, it fixes that problem. All right. Now the other problem I wanted to fix in here was I want to do a follow-up. So I'm also going to send an email to the technician. Okay. So I'm going to send an email. And in my mail, and I'm going to use Outlook. That way I'm in the same place. Now I'm going to actually in here, I'm going to send the email to the person that pressed the button. Okay, that whoever pressed that button to say send a validation. So who is that person that was on SharePoint and clicked that flow? That's who this is going to go to. All right. So I can type a person's name here, but I don't want to because I want to get that person up there. So instead, I'm going to click this little funny looking thing over here, and it will switch to advanced mode. And now I can scroll down on my dynamic token to for selected item and click user email. Okay, that means it'll go to the person who started this. And I will say validation response has been provided for ID. And then I might put the ID of the SharePoint list item. I can put whatever I want, by the way. I like using the ID because then I'll make sure that I know which one it is, right? And I'm going to say the customer responded, and then I will look at the action post a choice of options and choose their response, which is just selected option. So it tells me what they selected. Okay. I'm going to check the advanced options to show you that you can have this sent from someone else. Whoever has the right to send from a different account can go there. You can CC somebody. You can BCC somebody. You can add attachments. And so it's very cool. You got a lot of options with send an email Outlook 365. Okay, so let's test this again. So I'm going to save. Now I most definitely could, if I don't, and I'm waiting for that word saved, I could most definitely test this using the data from the last run. Or I can go to SharePoint and do that selection again. So let's do that. Okay, so let's go save. Wait for the word save to appear over here. Go back to my flows. Go to SharePoint. Pick a different item. Let's pick this one. Different one. You can only do one. And then up in the automate menu, choose your flow. Request validation from customer on Teams. And then let's run that flow. Okay, so this makes it very easy to kind of run these flows. If you're using a different trigger, then yeah, you would adjust to whatever your trigger supports. Okay, the goal of this video is really focused on the Teams post. Okay, so now we've got a new post here. Let's click on it. After we click on it, we will notice here that we do have returns. Now, it's very interesting. I wish I could zoom this for you. Let's see if I can zoom it. I don't think I can zoom too much. Oh, there we go. So I zoomed it for you so that you can see that even though I have 2 returns at the end of each line, it still looks like I have none. But at least they are 100% separate. So you did get from 2 returns, you got 1 line feed. So you got 1 line return, all right, which makes it much easier to read. Go ahead and put in more returns if you want it even spaced out more. Again, this has to do with how Teams translates the format of this card. Okay, so then now it's very clear that I'm responding to this ticket here, which is a very different ticket than before. Window casing, something to do with a window in zone 15. Okay, so can we close this? Most definitely. We looked at the window. The window's been replaced. The casing looks great. So we're going to say, yes, close the case. And then we can give them some positive reinforcement and press submit. Okay, so now that it closes, it returns back what I said. If we go to our flow and we look at the run, we can just summarize everything by first looking, here's your selected item. It ran fine. It was ID number 17 on SharePoint. So that is ID number 17 on SharePoint. If we go back to the run, close that. From that ID, we got an item. And this gave us the entire record, which we needed for our notifications. Then we set up the post, and we gave the post details on what to say to the user, right? And this post contains all the outputs, which means that in this run, I can read exactly when they responded. I can find out what tenant they were in, which user ID it was. This is helpful in CDS, I believe. And then these are all these different things that therefore give you, but most importantly, you're probably going to want to know what this selected option was. They chose yes, close the case. And then finally, with the email message, we put in those things. Let's go check email real quick. All right, I'll just double click on this. Oh, that's, excuse me, that's not the right email. I'll just reject this and get this out of the way here. All right, let's wait for our new email. Now this email might be coming from me, and I've been doing a whole bunch of testing this morning. There it is. So sometimes when you send yourself an email, I have a rule that puts my emails to me in a special folder. And you can see the email here is very clear. I wish I could make it bigger for you. There we go. It just basically says what I typed in there. Validation response has been provided for ID number 17. I played the role of the customer and the technician, so I got this response, and the customer responded, yes, close the case. And so now they know they can close the case for ID number 17. Okay, that's it. That was the whole story. So let's go back to Flow and say, that's it. That's the whole thing. That's the whole story. So I hope this helps Manish in Singapore to create his to understand better the post a choice of options as the flow bot to the user. Please, whenever you have questions about an action, here are two things you want to do. Thing number one, click the I. It often has details about how that works, often with also links to documents. So always check your I. Secondly, if the I doesn't have as much as you need, then go to the Flow community. So right on the top of your Flow interface, whatever page you're on, you'll see this question mark. After you click the question mark, click community. And now you can post questions in any of our forums. So this is a great way to get answers because we have specialists from all over the world watching these forums and they're waiting to help you. So I hope you enjoy your Power Automate experience and I'll be talking to you soon. Bye, Manish.